Welcome to the Wednesday, September 13th meeting of the Raymond Planning Board. Board will come to order. We do have a quorum. We have roll call, please.
Danielle Sanford.
Patricia Beaton.
Greg Foster.
Bruce Sanford.
Kyle Bancroft.
Ed Kranich.
The minutes are not available tonight from the last meeting to review, so we will skip over that. I have a general statement to read regarding planning board meetings in general. Welcome to the, well, we've already said that. The planning board will come to order. We do have a quorum. We've got roll call. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are being presented. Please notify the chairman if you are unable to hear or to see. The board works from a published agenda, and we will be considering tonight's items in the following order. Minutes, which we cannot do because we don't have them from the last meeting. We have a new business, a public hearing of an applicant for Raymond Dunkin' Donuts, Constantine Scrivanos, represented by Owens McCullough, Sebago Technics, followed by Planner Communications, and then adjournment. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances. After the board votes on the merits of each project application, it will prepare a written notice of decision. Generally speaking, appeals must be filed with the Superior Court within 30 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that this board's record evidences your participation this evening. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand, state their name, address, and affiliation with the project, if any. You must sign the sign-in sheet if you are speaking tonight. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. New business tonight is the, again, we'll have to skip over the minutes. New business, the public hearing for the Raymond Dunkin' Donuts applicant Constantine Scrivanos. Allow the applicant and his representative to reintroduce us to the project. And Owens?
Certainly. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will be recusing myself on this matter as I am employed by Sebago Technics, and they will be representing the applicant. Therefore, I will take a seat in the back and let Will Haskell handle the proceedings from here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Great. Good evening. I assume this is on. Are we good? Okay. Good evening. My name is Owens McCullough. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics here tonight on behalf of Gus Scrivanos of the applicant. With me is James Clifford in the back. Jim is a real estate person who represents Constantine and his projects. We were last before the planning board, a month ago, I guess it was, and George DeLagus, who is the architect, was here at the meeting. George was unable to come tonight, but Jim is here, who, again, is representing the developer. At that meeting, we presented the concept, the location, a fair amount of detail on the project to introduce the board. Since that time, we assembled the formal site plan application, which is before you tonight in that nice thick booklet that I brought along. And Will Haskell has completed a peer review of the project. Thank you. And Will and I spoke on the phone the other day, so I appreciate the time Will has taken to go over it with us. If the board is okay, I'd like to walk you through the project again a little bit since the last meeting. The project site is located on at 1247 Roosevelt Trail, Route 302. It's this site right here. It's right next to the Paris Farmer Union and the car wash on the other side. The parcel is 0.75 acres in size, so it's a fairly small parcel. We're only developing about half an acre of the parcel. I'm sure as you've looked through the plans, there's a fairly steep slope off the back that goes down to this kettle hole that's down in the back side of the property, and that slope is a slope we really want to stay away from for development purposes. So we've worked to keep the development up towards the front of the site. Dunkin' Donuts currently, the owners currently leases property in the Circle K that's just about 200 yards southerly of this site. And they've been trying to find a location in Raymond that they can own and operate on their own. They have found this parcel of land. They've actually closed on this parcel and have purchased it. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. As I indicated the last meeting, one reason why we tried to go through such a thorough presentation was there was a very short due diligence period, and the owner had to make a decision whether to purchase the property or search for another site. And we felt that seemed to be an appropriate location, and appreciate all the input the board had for us. The Dunkin' Donuts site will include about a 2,000 square foot building at the front, parking area internal to the site, circulation for quite a bit of queuing around the perimeter of the site. This has worked pretty well on the other sites they've done. Most recently, if you've been up to the one in Naples, same developer, we did that 3 years ago now, I guess it was. That has quite a bit of stacking around it, and we've all been to the Dunkin' Donuts, and car stacking is an important part of the sites. In fact, the Department of Transportation looks pretty closely at that as part of the traffic movement permit. And actually, we exceed what they require for stacking around the site. Order window or order kiosk is over here. Pickup is around this side of it, with exit this out through this way. Entrance comes in and it separates the parking from the circulation area around. There are some diagonal spaces here that are within the sort of the circulation path around the site. We have, if somebody needs to exit through here, we have provided a break in the curbing here so that they can get around the site. We envision these will mostly be for employee parking, and with this being customer parking inside. We have provided handicap parking within the project site. Truck circulation, I think when we were here at the last meeting, I talked about how we've designed the site, and in your packets, I believe there is some turning template diagrams that show how trucks would come in and out of the site. So what we've designed the site for is to allow those trucks to come in and basically use the parking lot to circulate around. These are rollover curbs in this location here and down here. The delivery times can be scheduled by Dunkin' Donuts, by the owner, to be outside of the normal business times. So they can come in here when there's relatively few people in the parking lot or nobody, and make that movement around inside the site. There is not enough room for the truck to make this turning movement all the way around. A tractor trailer just needs more room than we can provide. This is designed for passenger vehicles in and around the site. The topography on the site slopes towards the back of the parcel, towards the kettle hole or the pond in the back. There's a single-family house that was on the property that will be demolished. I think it sits just about right in this area here. And so we'll develop in this footprint here. The project will include a subsurface wastewater disposal system because there is no sewer in Raymond. That system is, we included the details, the HHE 200 in your packet. That system is an advanced treatment system. It's a soil air system. The idea behind that is because of our experience with Dunkin' Donuts, we like to go to a higher level of treatment of the wastewater. High BODs come out of because of the cream and the materials that go into the drinks. So we have an advanced treatment system in here with a 1,500 gallon per day oil grease separator out of the site septic tank location. We have, because of the size of the site and the volume, we have applied to the state of Maine. It's called a lot size variance waiver because you're allowed to have a certain amount of flow for a certain lot size unless you ask for a waiver for it. We've gone through this several other times on commercial lots, and as long as we're not really asking for any other waivers, that has gone through pretty straightforward, and Will noted that in his review comments. The other thing is we have an underground stormwater management system on the site. That system will take surface water and run it through an underground chambered system, through a filtration system, and then discharge it to the back of the site. While we don't have to go to the Department of Environmental Protection for stormwater management on this site, we have designed a system to treat the stormwater generally to those standards. The site's too small. Our development area doesn't trip any of those thresholds that would require us to go to the DEP. Will's review had commented on the discharge rates from the system. We were focused on treating the stormwater, and since this property abuts this sort of kettle hole in the back of the site, there's really no outlet. It looks to be glacial feature in it. We were going to focus more on treating the stormwater to get it back into the pond to allow for recharge of that water back into the system that was treated. We have since looked at our model after talking with Will, and I'm sorry, Will, I cut you out in the parking lot before the meeting, but we have a way to technically increase the stone volume and change the design slightly so that we get a little more detention on site, and so that our pre and post development discharge rates are pretty close to each other. Still, we treat the water to the higher level of standard and discharge it to the back of the site. And Will has mentioned that in his memo as one of the conditions, which we will certainly, I won't make Will take my word for it, I'll provide the paperwork for it. But we did look at that, and so I appreciate that conversation we had. In your packets, there's a photometric plan for lighting on the site. We use Swaney lighting, which uses the LED lights, cutoff lights, and it's focused on the parking area, and the photometrics was provided in your packet to show that we'll keep our lighting to our property, and we won't be dealing with sky glow. Basically, dark sky lighting is the intent of the lighting here. I want to take a moment to talk about the building. Well, let me talk about traffic a little bit more too. All Dunkin' Donuts projects require a traffic movement permit, and we have filed for that traffic movement permit. We had our scoping meeting with the town. Of course, Chris Hansen was there, and Will, I don't think you were able to make that meeting, but we provided a copy of the traffic movement permit in the packet. We have since met with the Department of Transportation. We've done some traffic counts on the site. At this point, it looks like they should be issuing a permit in the very near future. One of the things they look at Dunkin' Donuts sites are, because of the traffic approaches, a little over 200 trip-ins in the peak hour. A trip-in is a car coming in, a car coming out, so it might be like 100 round trips in and out. Is the ability to make a left-hand turn movement from the adjacent road. And if you were ever up at the Naples Dunkin' Donuts site, if you've gone by that, you'll see that a left-hand turn lane was built on that site coming from Naples heading in town. And that was because the warrants are there. Warrants meaning the traffic counts, the stacking, the queuing to make that turn justifies the left-hand turn lane. In the Naples case, we had to construct the left-hand turn lane because there wasn't anything there at the time. In this section of Raymond, there's actually a center dedicated turn lane that allows for turning in either direction. So in this case, we actually have that turn lane already built in the site. Site distance is great at this location. It's a pretty flat linear portion of the site, so that's not a concern. Nathan White, Public Works Director, has asked us originally we didn't show curbing. We've since added curbing to the plan coming out to the street. The sidewalk system that's out on the street doesn't have curbing associated with it. It's you have road, esplanade, and sidewalk on it. Apparently, at some point, and I don't know whether it's the town or DOT, maybe Will, maybe you know, Nathan had mentioned that there was going to be curbing installed by the town or DOT or somebody up through here on this. So he asked that we show the curbing running all the way out so that it would match into the curbing they will be installing. So we've done that on the plan. It'll be important to coordinate the timing of when our curbing goes down and when Nathan does his, because I don't like to put curbing out into the travel lane when there's not another curb to match to. Otherwise, it's just a hazard for the plow to clip and rip right up. So we'll just have to make sure that the timing coordinated, and we'll work with Nathan around that piece of it. The building itself is fairly small, about 2,000 square feet, not much larger than a good-sized ranch home. We have designed the site, the building, and I'm going to turn the plan around. So those are the building elevations of what the building will look like. Very similar to what we did in Naples. Raymond has, which actually were helpful to us because Raymond has some architectural guidelines. Dunkin's Donuts does not like to build buildings like this at the corporate. They like them to be more, I guess, kind of like what you see in Wyndham with that type of building. But because the town had architectural design standards, we were able to provide that to Dunkin' Donuts. They acquiesced and agreed, at least that's my understanding, Jim, you'll, at this point. And it's tough for them to do that, but they agreed because we sent them your entire packet of architectural standards. So in that regard, the town did a good job putting that together because we'd much rather build a building like this. So this building will have an asphalt shingled roof, architectural shingles. It will be a pitched roof with dormers, a dormer on the front, dormer on the side. There'll be a monolith bump out on the front of the building here, resembling a chimney. We'll be able to do eave returns on the building, changes in the roof lines as you look at it from the various angles to break it up, to make it more of a contemporary New England look. There'll also be, there's one section of roof that's flat towards the back, and you'll see on this, we're putting a railing up on top of it, very similar to what we did in Naples. It takes on the appearance of a deck up on top. It is not a deck up on top, but it allows to take on that appearance as a deck. Windows will be windows with grills or panes in them, with wide architectural treatments around the windows. Building materials will be the FCB, the cement fiberboard siding. Won't be vinyl. We think the fiberboard siding allows for a little bit bigger boards going up and takes on a more natural, a better look than the vinyl siding in this case. If you've ever been up to the Naples, that's the same material that's on the one at Naples. And I'm looking at Bruce because I know Bruce is familiar with those types of materials. We'll do PVC siding and aluminum wrap on the eave lines of the roofs, and there will be returns on the roof like here. This is the side facing the entrance, so that's a bump out, and there'll be a door from this side coming in, and then again a pitched roof around the building. So the idea was to develop a design that is consistent with the architectural standards that the town has set forth, that are focused, from my understanding, on more of a contemporary New England look, getting away from that flat block Napa building Dunkin' Donuts look, and which we were able to do in this case. And so those standards came in quite handy for the project. The site is serviced by public water. We did get an ability to serve letter from the Portland Water District, which I believe is included in that thick booklet that we had assembled. And that booklet includes the first few pages, a narrative of all the permitting we have to go through. Really, because of the size of this project, the only permitting we're looking at is local site plan permitting through you folks and the main Department of Transportation TMP permit. At our last meeting, we did have a conversation around the need for a waiver on the side yard setback. If you remember correctly, the commercial zone has a 15-foot side yard setback, which can be waived down to 5 feet if it's in a setting where the development on the other side, like pavement up close to the property line on the other side, or parking on the other side of the property line, which we have in this case with the car wash to the north that has circulation right up next to the property line. I mean, they're almost paved right up to the property line. What we're going to do is let me flip the back over. So up on this side, here's the edge of the parking on the car wash side of it. Here's the edge of our parking. There's a 5-foot separation through here. On the southerly side will be 10 feet off the property line. Because of the topography drop, if you've seen the site, the topography drops a little bit off to the side, off to the south and to the back. We'll end up with a modular retaining wall around this piece of the site. That wall will be set back about 7 or 8 feet from the side of the property line, with the pavement 10 feet from the edge of the property line. The reason we're asking for those waivers, as we talked about at the last meeting, is that when you look at the size of this parcel, configuration of the parcel, and physically what we need to accommodate this separation between the drive-through and the parking on site. You literally start at this side with the drive aisle. We do provide some landscaping here. We have parking in here, a circulation area, parking, angled parking to try to reduce this side, and a drive-through on this side. And when you go, you just take the physical measurements across the side, you end up with 5 feet on this side and 10 feet on this side of the site. We looked at other configurations through the process. We talked about that quite a bit at the last meeting, I think, to bring the drive aisle through the center of the site. But what happens is when you've been to the Wyndham Dunkin' Donuts, the one in Standish, when the drive aisles go through the site, people are stacked right up through the center of the parking, and nobody can either get into the parking or get out of the parking. So it's best to have those separated. It's a lesson learned from a number of Dunkin' Donuts, and this works the best for circulation. It's very similar to the one we did in Naples, and that circulation from all accounts works very well. We do have a landscape plan that has been developed for the project. It includes landscaping and street trees along the front, a couple of trees on the back side of it, some landscaping and a small esplanade along the wall on this side, and some additional landscaping in this green strip area here, and what we can fit in along the edge here. The owner is very aggressive on his landscaping. He likes a lot of perennials, likes a lot of look to it. Jim can nod and take him on that. More than likely, there'll even be more landscaping in there than what's even shown on this plan. If you've been up to the Naples, I think for the most part, there's a fair amount of landscaping involved in that, but he's very adamant about that for his landscaping piece. Let's see, I just want to make sure. There was one other item that somebody at the board brought up last time that was a great idea. There was a question about if we have all this pedestrian movement along Route 302 and the sidewalk, shouldn't we have some way of sidewalk getting up to the site? Now this plan this was my color rendering from the earlier one, but the plans that you have that we're asking for approval through does have a sidewalk now that comes up alongside the side of the building to get to the site. And that was, I don't know, Will, maybe you even mentioned, was that was you that mentioned that, right? Okay. So it was a great idea. So, and the owner was all for it because they want to capture pedestrians too coming to the site. So the plans you have in front of you have that access to the site. So with that, we're here tonight. Appreciate you hearing our presentation, and either Jim or I will try to answer questions the board may have. And if we read the planner's review, are agreeable to the 3 items that were in the review letter. In fact, Will and I talked about them, and so we look forward to having a new Dunkin' Donuts in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Owens. Any member of the board have any questions for Owens at this particular time? Well, let's move on to the public hearing, and we'll have that, and then we'll have...
Will's review first? We have Will's review first, or?
Should we do that before the public hearing? A
think
little
so.
bit. Do we, is that what we normally do?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Will, you want to go over your comments on the application for the public hearing?
Sure. Do I need to push this button, or am I good? I'm good. Excellent.
Have to get the
Thank you.
procedure.
My name's Will Haskell with Goral Palmer Consulting Engineers. I apologize because we received the application material about a week ago, so it took a little while for me to get through it and get the memo back to you guys, to you folks here at the board. I also have to apologize in that I didn't have a copy of the design standards for the building, and I wasn't able to download those off the website because the link was broken. So I did not review the design standards relative to the building architecture in this memo. So I'm not sure what that may cause, but I wasn't able to get that as part of the planning board memo. But in general, I mean, I think the plan is very well done. I go through the site plan review standards in the memo. As Owens mentioned, I did have some comments relative to stormwater. Mainly relative to the peak flow discharges from the stormwater system. They were a little bit higher than what I would normally like to see coming out of in terms of comparing pre to post development stormwater. So we talked about that on the phone, and again, based on what Owens said tonight, it sounds like they've been able to modify that system to reduce the differences in the pre to post stormwater calculations, which I haven't seen yet, but it sounds like they've got those quite a bit closer than what they were in the application materials that I looked at. So I did have concerns about that. We also talked about the discharge from the subsurface detention pond that discharges on that steep slope going down to the kettle hole. And they had a level lip spreader in there, and there was some differences in what was shown on the plan view versus the detail. So I'm assuming that's going to be addressed as well. And I think a lot of my concerns will go away or be much less if they've been able to reduce the peak flows. I was a little concerned with the peak flows coming out of that discharge and running down that hill to the kettle hole, and with a potential for causing erosion. But I think that will likely be taken care of with the updated calculations. There were a couple other comments that I had which really go away. I had initially, when I looked at the calculations, I thought they were infiltrating stormwater out of the detention pond. but that's not the case. The infiltration rate that they had in there, they have what's called a sand filter underneath the chambers in the detention pond to provide treatment for the stormwater. And the infiltration rate that they had in their calculations actually was for the water going through the sand filter, not the water going down into the ground. And my understanding from Owens is that they're going to be putting a liner underneath that detention pond, so there will be no infiltration into the groundwater from the detention pond. So the one comment I had was about a certain registration form that DEP likes to see for infiltration systems. That goes away because they're not going to have an infiltration system. And then the other comment I had was relative to separation between septic systems and stormwater infiltration. But if they're going to have a liner in there, there is no issue there. So again, I haven't seen the revised calculations, but based on what I hear, it sounds like they'll address my concerns relative to the stormwater anyway on this project. And utilities, again, they've provided an ability to serve letter from Portland Water District. Owens described their advanced treatment system for the septic disposal. They have the 1,500 gallon grease trap, which is a good thing for a restaurant type facility. I guess one other comment that as you were describing the retaining wall, Owens, wasn't clear to me, and I may just be missing it. Is there any kind of a guardrail along that curb line with the retaining wall, or is there not a need for a guardrail there? I know you've got a curb all the way along that edge, but then you've got the guardrail, which isn't too far away from the curb, and it almost looked like it might need a guardrail in there, because it looked like the retaining wall was ranging anywhere from 4 to 6 feet of elevation difference.
You talking around the back lower right corner back there, or?
I don't have a pointer, but basically all the way from the entrance around the back corner.
Oh, okay.
I actually had thought about a guardrail through there at one point, because right when we do highway road designs, if you don't have a clear zone, you have to add a guardrail. And I was trying to decide if something like this would constitute a road or some sort of standard for that. And I was wrestling with that because the vehicles going through that will most likely be stopped. They're moving creeping very slow while they're stacked and queued. So, and I don't have any pedestrian access back there. So, I guess I'm not opposed to putting a guardrail up there. I guess I'm a little bit ambivalent to it. I mean, I don't mind doing it. It's just.
From my perspective, I mean, I guess if I had some documentation from the applicant in terms of why they feel like they don't need a guardrail in that location, maybe a written
Sure.
Response or something, I would be fine with that. I mean, I generally agree with you relative to the slow-moving traffic in there. You do have some pitch down in there. I don't know, didn't measure what the slope was exactly, but it looks like it's 2 to 3% or so running down that side.
You know, Will, maybe it would be sort of thinking in terms of probably where the most risk is, might be down around that corner. So maybe that would be a place to put some guardrail, down around that corner, and then maybe not worry so much about this area here, but where that, because there's a storm drain down there and it's all kind of coming down to that corner. So I'm not opposed to doing that down in that corner. That might be a good sort of safety approach.
Oh, and how much of the retaining wall is exposed face on the high side? Is it pretty much flush, or is it up 12 inches or 18 inches?
These walls are,
I mean, you can
Boy,
build them
they're-
any way you want. I just
Yeah.
don't know how you thought about that design, whether building the wall another quarter too high or would obviate the need for a guardrail and be a little bit less expensive.
so we have curb on the inside. You know, I don't have that detail with me. I don't know if it shows a reveal, but that is an option. We could maybe do a reveal, and instead, I think if you do a guardrail, it has to be
32 inches?
inches
I don't know.
or
I don't
30.
know what the
Will, do
standard
you remember
is.
that number?
Yeah. I mean, the other option might be like a timber type guardrail or something
Yeah.
that might look a little better than a galvanized metal rail in there.
Jim just said timber, please. Not that.
Forest products, good.
After everything we've done with trying to make the building look nice, to put those, yeah, no.
What type of a height would you like to see?
I mean, typically-
If they extended the wall up, what would you like to see?
Well, the problem with extending the wall up is then it becomes a different type of a wall.
Wall, yeah.
Because those modular block walls, I mean, they do have freestanding versions of those, but most of them are intended to have soil backing them up. And it's a different, more expensive type of a wall if you have a freestanding portion of that. And
Right.
so I would almost think the timber guardrail might even be a better option from the
Cost
developer's
and- yeah.
standpoint than extending that wall up.
If folks are agreeable, at this point, I would like to propose bringing a timber guardrail around that, sort of that lower corner, and not trying to do too much with the wall, because I think they have some pretty specific requirements around those modular block walls, how much reveal they can have and things
Uh-huh.
like that, so.
And what's the retaining on the lower right corner back there, like 4 feet or something?
Oh, on the lowest corner, it's, again, I don't have that plan right in front of me, but it's probably more like 6 or 8 feet, Will? Is that what it showed on
The
the?
6 feet was actually further up the
Maybe
straight
it was,
portion
maybe
of
it
the
comes,
drive,
maybe it's a
and
lot less.
I think it's a little bit less than that down there. Top of wall, bottom of wall, well, it is, it's actually about 7 feet.
Yeah.
314 to 307.
I think down around that corner, it would be, from an owner's risk and liability standpoint, I think putting.
Winter.
Yeah, right, yeah, no,
Shooting
I think
around that
that
corner.
would be, that's a good idea. We'll put something down around that corner.
So, again, I haven't do this enough with you folks to know, if you read down through the memo, or you just summarize it like I just did, I guess I was gonna go into kind of conditions of approval, but, potential conditions.
Well, we have to have a public hearing first, but I think that anything that does not appear to be a conflict or that they are in conformance with the statutes, we would just so note it and just skip over it.
Okay,
We don't need to read every single instance, but things where you have comments,
yep,
we need to discuss all those and come to some kind of a conclusion, yeah.
right. So again, I think I've mentioned those. I mean, I've got the reference to the traffic movement permit under vehicular access. I talk a little bit about that. So again, I think in general, I don't have any major issues with the plan other than mostly related to the stormwater that I already talked about, so.
Going back to the guardrail, what's the maximum retaining on the downslope side that you'd be comfortable with not having a guardrail? Anything higher than a 4-foot retaining or a 3-foot retaining? We need give us some kind of guidance here so Owens can know
Well, I
how
think,
far he has to take it around the corner there.
I think, coming down the main access aisle where it's relatively straight, when you've got a 6-inch reveal curb before you get to the guardrail, I would agree that I'm not overly concerned at that point, but as you start to make that corner down at the bottom, I think wrapping the guardrail around there really would make a lot of sense from a safety perspective. Especially given that the wall is 6 to 7 feet tall in that area. So I think I guess I would say to give some direction, kind of from the end of the wall, where it ends, kind of wrapping it back up around the corner.
Up here or something?
Yeah, up into that straight section a little bit. I don't have an exact measurement on that.
Yeah, it looks like it disappears to about 3 feet of retaining, roughly half the way up the east travel. Not quite to the corner of the island in the upper right where you turn into the donut lane. Maybe taking it at least halfway up the east side to where you get to about 3 feet or so retaining, and then back down around the corner.
I could be on board with that, or even if it was a little bit shorter, but that's really, if you want it halfway up,
It seems like and I agree as I look at it more and thinking about the grading, protecting that corner is really because winter conditions, somebody slides around that corner or,
Hit the gas instead of the brake.
Well, yeah.
Off they go.
I hope not, but anything can happen, but I think we should protect that corner.
Okay. All right. As far as the architectural standards, that's something that I don't think we really get into. That's more of a CEO issue.
okay.
It's either in conformance or it's not, and he has to work that out with the code enforcement people as part of the permitting process. I don't think we'll get into that.
Who is that now?
No, I believe it's optional anyway. Suggested.
Anybody have any questions for Will at this point? We'll come back and revisit that. We need to have the public hearing.
Right. Is this not the public hearing?
No. We haven't had it yet, no.
Haven't opened it up yet.
There's no detail on the plans for the type of wall. Is there any information on that?
It should be on a detail sheet, a typical modular block wall. Is it on there somewhere, Will?
I'm not sure I see it on.
I don't see one.
If it's not, then I don't know why it's not. Usually we put a standard, but different manufacturers have different dimensions, but we have a typical detail that we specify on it. Usually,
I think that should be added.
yep, I would, yeah. I have to have
A lot of times, what I would recommend on those as well, and again, you're starting to get into some heights that are, and I'm not sure what type of wall you're using, but you're starting to get into some heights that are kind of on the verge of maybe needing some geogrid or something in there.
Oh, yeah, those would.
So a lot of times what I would recommend to the board is to put a condition that says that the wall design needs to be submitted as part of the building permit application, just so you have a detail for that wall design on record. Once, I don't think the planning board necessarily needs to review it, but it's something that it's good to have for the code officer to.
I'm okay, because our standard detail says that wall has, because different manufacturers have different setups for the walls, but we require them to provide a plan that's been sealed by a PE, so it's gone through a level of design by the manufacturer, and that's on our standard detail, and it should be on the plan. If it's not, I apologize, but I'll add it to the plan. But we require those to.
Maybe if you could provide a standard section of the wall.
Yep.
And just a note underneath the section that it's to be, properly designed by a professional engineer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work. One thing I noted is that on the trash area, The note on the plan says that there are 6 bollards. But there's only 2 drawn on the plan, so I think you probably need to clarify that, either draw in 4 more bollards or change the note to 2 bollards for
Well,
the
they're
trash
scattered,
area.
they're scattered around, and it also calls out to use the bollards as the sign holders. I had a question about the size of the bollards. They're only 30 inches tall. Is that what their intent was?
That's a pretty standard height for it, because they're intended for bumpers of vehicles coming into it. That's what we've always used on these.
I just note the discrepancy. You've got 6 noted in the trash area, and then over by the handicap parking, you've got 2 noted. And with 2 handicap parking spaces, the note stipulates 2 bollards, so that matches up. But at the trash area, it stipulates 6, and you've got 2 drawn in there.
Should only be,
So there's-
in the trash, there should only be, I think, actually, I wanted 2 outside, so let me go back here. I have a curb around here, but I wanted to put a couple on the outside of the fence, just for vehicles and plows. There's 2 inside, but I don't know why it said 6. There should, at 4 at the most would be down there.
There's
Yeah,
3
you
shown
might
on my
want to detail
plan.
the locations and make sure the quantity and the details, the quantity shown, the detail for the numbers matches up.
There's actually 3 shown on my plan. There's 2 inside the enclosure and 1 on that
Must be on
corner
that
that's
corner, yeah.
right where the curb goes around. There's another symbol there for a bollard.
Okay, I see the 3rd one there now, yeah. The other thing I noted is that a lot of the write-ups indicate a 1,500 gallon grease separation unit, but the detail shows a 2,000 gallon unit on the plan. So you might want to just change the detail to a 1,500 gallon, or 1,500 instead of a 2,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions right at this very second? I'll advance on to the public hearing. I'd like to close discussion of the board temporarily while we have a public hearing. Anybody in the audience that would like to address the application, please step up to the microphone and state your name and your address and your association with the project, and be happy to hear your concerns. Anyone wish to speak?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Welch. I live at 8 Elizabeth Avenue. My property backs up to that property. I don't have a problem with it as a whole. I kind of like the idea that it's pushed forward and everything. My concern was what was going to happen with the storm water as far as that pond down back is concerned, because that is a life pond. There's a lot of life in that pond, a lot of life that uses that pond, and I didn't want to see storm water draining down into that pond, but it sounds like he's got that pretty well covered. I guess the other issue I have, and it's because I've had an issue with the Dunkin' Donuts next door, is the speaker on the drive-through. We were not supposed to be able to hear that speaker on the drive-through that's at the Dunkin' Donuts at the Circle K. And I have had to go out there several times over the years and complain about that. They'll turn it down, I won't hear it. Then they'll turn it back up. I see no reason for that when there's a vehicle sitting right beside that speaker. When I can hear it through a closed double pane window at 6 o'clock in the morning, that's an issue. And I don't want to have that issue again with this building. I don't know if that's something that you people deal with, or if it's the code enforcement or what. But I just wanted it known that I'd like something done with that speaker as far as it being too loud, or even if they go with something like what they got in Freeport, which is a voiceless speaker.
That's not something the planning board would adjudicate. That would be, I think, a code thing, but I'm sure that the applicant and would be sensitive to that. I'm just curious, could you point out where your residence is in relation to?
It's, my house is the house right out behind,
The other side of the pond?
the other, well, no, I'm out behind, yeah.
Car wash?
No, the other place.
Paris?
Paris Farmers Union.
Must be over here, sure.
And my land goes down in back and then abuts the property owner down
So
back.
you're a
and
lot
that
closer to
property.
the existing Dunkin' Donuts than the proposed one.
Yes.
It'd be this
Okay.
one. Is that right? There's the pond.
Here, that's the subject property, right? Right, 23A. And this
Bruce?
is where it is now at 25?
No, it's over here now.
He's
What-
not Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. All right.
Bruce, what may help in this instance, and Jim just reminded me that the speaker in this case will be facing, well, it will help in that it's facing that way as opposed to the existing
180
circle.
degrees away from his house.
Right, and the Circle K, I think, was focused at his house, so the direction will probably help too, because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Jim just mentioned that to me, and it's probably not in a good, where it is at the Circle K is probably pointed right at his house.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry about
pretty-
that.
It is pretty much.
Yeah.
And, but like I said, you know, when that place was built,
Sure.
we weren't supposed to be able to hear that speaker. And we hear it all the time. And it's just been one complaint after another. And I, you know, when I found out about this, I wanted to make sure it wasn't gonna happen again with this building. I don't, like I said, I don't have a problem with the building. I was just worried about stormwater getting down into that pond and the speaker.
Is there any landscaping other than just loam and seed in that long strip of island where the speaker location is going to go in the main parking lot?
It's mostly shrubs and low plantings down through there. Just, it's fairly narrow strip, so it'd be difficult to do much more. There is a guardrail down through there, but just to separate the two pieces. But actually, we may have removed that guardrail, but there is planting down through there, just so we could have more planting through
Is
there.
it possible to consider some of the low plantings right behind the speaker box to come up a little bit higher and to provide a little bit of a leafy shrub shield to noise transmission backwards?
Yeah.
You put in a 24-inch RBVD instead of an
Right,
18-inch
yeah.
RBVD, something like that.
Yeah, those sort of things would, sure. I mean, want to be good neighbors, so.
Okay, all right.
Perfect. Those are the only concerns I had.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Hearing no more comments, we'll close the public hearing. Return back to board deliberations. I guess at this point, we will walk through generally the things that, in the site plan review standards. Apparently, item 1, preservation of landscaping. 2, relation of proposed buildings to the environment. 4, parking and circulation. Item 6, utilities. 7, special features. 8, exterior lighting. 9, emergency vehicle access. 10, landscaping. Those all appear to have no comments from the town planner that merit any consideration. We're only looking at discussing further items. 3, vehicular access that needs an MDOT traffic movement permit. Will's concerns about surface water drainage in item 5. And also inclusion of inspection and maintenance and housekeeping plan in the stormwater narrative.
That's included already.
Okay, okay. So really, items 3 and 5 are the only things that we need to specifically break out. So unless somebody on the board has an objection to just stating that there are no conformance issues with items 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we will just pass over those items as being acceptable and revert back to discussing items 3 and 5. Item 3, the project does require a main MDOT traffic permit, traffic movement permit, which no one has indicated. They've had the meeting with the state and they're awaiting the final ruling on that. Is that correct, Owens?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think as long as that traffic movement permit meets the engineering standards and are acceptable to the town planner and the code enforcement officer, does anybody on the board have any concerns or questions, discussions about that item?
Before we move on, I think we need to call for a vote whether the application is complete or not. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I'm still awfully new at this, so.
I move that we deem the application by the applicant complete.
You have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All vote in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Where did you find this?
I made it.
Okay.
Now we can go back to the board discussion.
We have to make a motion to, with regards to this and moving on to
Yeah.
3 and 5.
Make a motion. Do you want to make a motion that we accept everything except, was it 2 and?
Except 3
3
and
and
5.
5.
Yeah.
Think.
Okay, item 3, we know with the main MDOT, and then item 5, the stormwater, there were issues that Will has raised that Owen said he'll address. So do I hear a motion to acceptance of the application with the conditions of the main MDOT movement permit being submitted, and that the surface water drainage issues be addressed per the requirements of the town planner?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the application is acceptable pending resolution on items 3 and 5 in the town planners. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. We have the waiver we need to discuss.
We have the waiver, we have, I think we gotta address some conditions. Unless, did we just do that?
Yeah, let's discover the waiver first, and then we'll get into the conditions as part of the final approval, the motion for final approval. The waiver is requested on the north side to have the pavement within 5 feet of the property line, because there's pavement on the other side within 5 feet of the property line. Is that the only side you're requesting the waiver on, or you're requesting on the south side too?
South side too, that's at the
Yeah, because you're
wall.
within 10 feet there instead of 15 feet. Questions from the board? Any discussions on that?
Move we accept the waiver request for the setbacks for this project.
It's only, what is it, north and south side?
North and south, yeah.
North and south
Yeah.
side of the
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, north and south side of the property.
We've got pavement setback.
Okay, I didn't say that, did I? We're having fun.
That's okay.
You have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the board on that? All in favor? Waiver? Opposed? No? The waiver's passed. Then we have the conditions, correct?
The condition of the wall design, I move that we,
The guardrail?
yes, well, I don't have these in any particular order. I move we accept the applicant's with the condition that the wall be designed and submitted with a, well, included in the submission, using the proper engineer. I think those were,
He's got to change the septic detail to 1,500 gallon from 2,000 gallons on the plan.
want to do them all at once?
Sure, throw them all in there.
And also include changing the septic, was it capacity from 2,000 to 1,500 gallons per day?
Oh, that's the size of that was the size of the grease trap.
Okay.
On the plan.
On the plan. What else have we got?
We have the guardrail.
Yep, the
Right?
Guardrail, yeah.
wooden guardrail.
And also that guardrail be included at which corner? Would be the
Southeast.
eastern corner.
Clarifying the baller count.
Bollards, right?
Yeah.
So is it southeastern?
Yes. I guess,
Southeast.
southeast, yeah.
Southeastern corner.
And that we clarify the number of bollards. The plan should say there are 4, and they need to all be shown on the plan.
Yep.
Is that right?
What?
Well, there's 3 on the plan, right?
Oh,
I guess I
yeah,
don't know why,
number of
I
bollards.
thought about, why do I need one on the back side of that fence, right? I just really need the 3, right? The one in the corner and the one on the 2, so I should need to change the note to say 3, not 6.
Okay. I'll amend my movement from that it should say 3 bollards, not 6 on the plan. And how about the infiltration issue where we're using the liner? Is there any need to address that?
I think
That's
my
part of
my
your-
suggestion was just to respond to the stormwater comments as requested by the town planner, but you can be more specific, I guess, if you want to, but.
But your comments don't include anything about language about a liner right now, right?
You can add, I have to because I have to, otherwise I'm in violation of the Maine State.
They won't get a septic permit if they don't.
Okay,
I have good motivation to put a liner in,
okay.
so you can add that if you wanted. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
It's
We'll
on,
include
it's
the
on the
condition.
detail.
Wanna
It
include
shows
that
it in the
language in?
detail.
Yeah.
With the liner, because it sounds like it's part of code enforcement
Well,
with the
I mean,
plans.
Part of your design criteria then, okay.
And it's really subject to
Yeah.
review by me and
The code enforcement.
code enforcement if they want,
So-
but
I don't
So
think that
can-
needs to be in there.
so just
No,
forget
they,
it.
they show that liner in the detail anyways.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
doesn't,
ignored in
that
the
just
plan.
shouldn't need to be in there.
That all of
I
I
them?
don't
think I
think
got
so.
them all.
I think you did.
We have one more.
Which one was that?
Gentleman's landscaping around the speaker.
Landscaping.
Oh, landscaping around the speaker,
Oh.
right,
Right.
sorry.
Oh,
And to address the
Yeah.
concerns with
Yeah, I
the,
Oh, the shrubs at the speaker.
with
Yeah.
your noise, yeah, for
And also
landscaping.
include a condition that landscaping be included around the speaker.
Okay, we have a movement, a motion to approve the application with the conditions that the cross-section of the wall detail, the retaining wall detail, be provided with a note that it shall be designed by a professional engineer, and that the 1,500 gallon septic will be noted properly on the detail on the plan instead of the 2,000 gallon currently shown, that a guardrail will be provided around the appropriate area of the exposed retaining wall around the curve and areas where somebody overshooting, going over the wall could be an issue, that the bollard count be corrected to 3 instead of 6 as shown on the plan, and that landscaping shrub work be considered around the speaker for noise control. We have all that in there?
Yep, that's
Okay.
everything.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Planner communications for the night. Jim, come on up.
Good night, all.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to hand out, what we've got is where Ala Mexicana currently is in Bern. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Mason, are here this evening, and we met with them today, and one of the concerns is they're looking to replace the structure there with a diner. The issue that we have is getting back to the design guidelines, which, as you noted, are guidelines, but they are also an important factor and required in the site plan review, especially in the C1 zone. So I'm just going to pass these along. They currently have an option to purchase this particular unit. The concern is that, you know, while we have these design guides, these are go against the grain of basically everything that we ask for in the design guidelines, meeting New England architecture with pitched roofs and things like that. However, in meeting with them, there are some elements that we can add to these that can make them more compliant and more likely match kind of the timber framing that we have like on the shopping center now. What they want to do is basically set that on the footprint where the Mexicana is now, with the long side perpendicular to 302, so that you'd be looking at the short side of that diner, and then the long side would go back into the lot. And the idea was in the front of the short side, they might do a courtyard, put up some pergola or some kind of timber framing in the front so that there'd be a canopy type thing over the courtyard, and they could have outdoor seating in there. And then maybe on the vestibule, we could do something over the top of that to give it a little bit of pitch and a little bit of contrast. If you go through the design guidelines, obviously that type of structure is frowned upon, the siding's frowned upon. But with that said, I don't think there's a state in the United States you can go to that doesn't have a diner of this nature somewhere. So it's an interesting conflict of things that we have here, and tonight they were just hoping to get some kind of feedback from the board, whether they would support that, whether they had any major concerns or anything they could do. Obviously, they're in a time crunch because they want to get the business back up and operating, and there's been much community support to do that. This would allow them to bring that unit in and get it established much quicker than it is to design something from scratch or to renovate the existing building there. I think some of the feedback we have is that, you know, a lot of people would like to see that old structure change and something different go in there. This would be an opportunity for them to kind of upgrade the site, do more with landscaping, and you know, provide the business to get back up immediately. So
They'd be tearing the existing building down.
Correct, yep. So there's no decision you have to make tonight, it's just general input, whether you think that that's something that you could, again, do you have any concerns? Do you like the concept? Do you oppose the concept? Again, it's just for general feedback for them. They're here this evening just to see where they go from here, because obviously, you know, this is a unit that's available, I think, in Ohio. Is that what you said? So if they have to move on this, they have to move quickly, and so a lot of that would depend upon, you know, what the board will require when they come to the board for site plan approval, because this will come back to the board for site plan approval.
Yeah, yeah. Thoughts by the board?
Going back to the previous project, the design front
Mm-hmm.
consistent with the Raymond requirements?
Guideline, they're called guidelines.
The guidelines, so it's
Yes.
part of code?
That is actually up to you folks. I know
It
the
is?
last one you did.
Okay.
It is not really a design. If Chris and I were doing a staff review, we would follow the same design guidelines. In this case, it's whoever the planning authority is has the authority to say it should match this or not that. As Greg pointed out, though, these are guidelines. These aren't drop dead requirements.
Right.
So, but the problem is if you let it go too far, you start setting a precedent, and then we start getting out of context with the comprehensive plan, because this is all based on the comprehensive plan, which is already outdated, but that's another discussion for another day. So it's and I think with some architectural elements, which what they want to do, I think they could meet a lot of these criteria. If you've ever read this, and I don't know how many of you have, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the appearance, how it visually appears from the public perspective, minimizing effects if it does have something intrusive. It kind of does box everything into that pitched roof, New England style Cape look. But it does offer a glimpse of opportunity for people to be non-traditional as well. But you still have to meet, within the guidelines, there's components for site planning, architecture, which is their main concern, but there's also landscaping, lighting, signage, those are all components of the guidelines.
Yeah.
So I think if they were stronger on those other items, and with a little bit of outside elements, I think they could make this an attractive location to meet everybody's goals, and obviously to get them up and operating again. But ultimately, it's your decision. And you're not making a final vote tonight. Obviously, you'll be able to see a little bit more architecture as we go forward with this. It's just to say that you do think that there is in that area, that something like this could happen with some features.
Well, speaking only for myself, lived in Raymond since 1989, and that particular building has always been a restaurant. I guess my chief concern would be if they tear the existing building down and put in a diner and they go out of business, then it's pretty much going to be forced to be a restaurant to whoever wants to move into it in the future, or they're going to have to tear it down and build a new building again. Once the diner is in, that's pretty much it. It's going to be a restaurant, and which handcuffs them in a way, and yet it seems to be kind of an interesting concept. I think architecturally it looks kind of snazzy. I guess that would be my chief concern, offset by the fact that, when we first moved here, it was a lobster house, and then it became the Italian house, and now it's the Mexican food
Made the
house.
world trip, huh?
So it's that's just speaking for myself. I don't have any overt objection to it.
I think the other thing too, with this being a diner of this nature, being able to be transported in, I think that leaves you a lot of flexibility that if it doesn't stay a diner, it's easily removed as well.
So this is a modular, like mobile?
It's kind of like a
Modular units, and they come in about 4 sections, and we set a foundation, and they place them in there. Now, that can be taken out anytime. You can move them over and over again.
Is it a full frost foundation? Is
There's
this,
no wood whatsoever in the building.
yeah.
It's all steel, and, that's the way they're made. And the reason we wanted to do this concept is because we're trying to get him back into business. Now, I can rebuild what I've got there.
Sir, you're gonna have to.
But that'll happen sometime in next July, by the time it gets done. So I'm thinking to myself, what do we do to put this guy back in? And that's how we come up with this concept. I could tear it down or just leave it and put him somewhere else. I don't want to lose the guy. And that's the reason we went this way. That looks at all kinds of modular units. That particular unit, brand new, is $1.2 million. That's what it cost. So the discussion we had today was we're going to put some kind of facade in the front, because that's a lot smaller in the footprint. So it'll sit towards the back, lengthwise, and then the front part of it, we're going to landscape and put some timbers up, and of course you'll see some drawings of it. But that's the only reason we're going this route, because otherwise I've got to put him somewhere else.
Is this going to
I
be a
don't
used
think that's-
building, or is it new?
What's that?
Is this a used building, or is it new?
Used.
It's used, but
It's used, but
we
it's,
went out and looked at it, and it's brand new, really. It's beautiful.
And the intention is that this would be there permanently, not that it would be temporary until something else was built.
No,
It-
no. I mean, if if you were to turn around, like he said, he's worried about a restaurant, okay, obviously, he's been very successful there. So I don't see that changing. But if you turn around, you say, okay, well, he's gone, right? You've got a restaurant there, you can sell the unit and have the vacant lot and somebody can put a building up there. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. That's
does.
easy enough to move.
Yeah, it gives him a lot of flexibility. You know, if this particular restaurantee doesn't work out, and if he's not able to get another one in there, then obviously, like he said, it's very easy to remove and take out.
The only reason we're doing this is because of time. He hasn't got, you know, right now, I looked at, in fact, I've been in touch with every contractor in the world. And they turn around and come back with numbers and how long it's gonna take to rebuild what we have there, okay? And we'll look at it, you know, next spring. In the summer, okay? So that puts them out of business all winter. And then I turn around, well, if we tear it down and build a new building, that's basically the same thing. And, you know, the facade there right now, I don't think it blends in too well myself. But that would change that. And not only that, we'd have taken up less of a footprint there as far as the restaurant's concerned and be able to put some kind of facade and outdoor.
What do you think you might do on the back part of the building?
Yeah,
The
you know,
existing
see,
building
yeah, the
sticks
back
out
part of the
back.
building would go back. We can put, you know, a fence up there on the way in the back. I don't know if you ever seen the back of that building, but
Yeah, around, I think what we
It's-
discussed today was around the side facing 302,
Yeah.
anything, you know, we could, with the timber framing and pergola type thing we could do there, and with the outdoor seating, and then with, you know, we're gonna have an opportunity to do more landscaping because the footprint's so much smaller.
Yeah.
So with some landscaping, obviously, we can tuck and, not hide this, but we can actually, you know, make it look a little bit less, clean it up and look presentable. I think the
anything's
only
better,
thing-
like those
anything's
things.
better than the facade we have now.
We're seeing the flavor of rain.
Right, but the only change would be is obviously, you know, from a roof standpoint, it's
Right.
rounded, and from a siding standpoint, it's
Right, it's
metallic.
something a little different.
It's a
so
little bit
aesthetically,
different, but I
gonna make
think-
it more.
I think with the architectural features around the vestibule and around the end, you know, as you're going by, it's gonna be different, but it's gonna have that element that kind of brings it into the shopping center as well. Sure.
Yeah. Those elements would probably have to be freestanding separately.
Correct. Yeah,
Structurally
they'd be freestanding,
from the modular unit,
Right,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
But they could go, you know, kind of cascade over the top so that it would hide the actual roof lines, looking at it from 302, because it'd be higher.
Mhm.
Kind of like a false facade or, but
Yeah.
also they were talking about putting little lights underneath that and having it as a nice outdoor patio, you know,
Mhm.
really make it nice, and then put some landscaping around it again to meet all the other elements of the guidelines, and then the parking lot would remain pretty close to the way it is now.
This building's about as far as you could get away from the design guidelines.
It is.
But, you know, that being said, diners, the steel diners are an iconic American.
They're a traditional,
thing.
iconic
So,
Americana, yeah.
You know, even, I would consider looking at even putting it out in front more rather than trying to hide it completely. You know, different, maybe if you could just get rough concepts of both options.
Yep. And I mean, that's the other piece of this, there's conflicting, if you read through this, it does conflict with different layouts. In one aspect, it says, you know, trying to minimize the building front. Another piece says, yeah, we want to see more of the building up front. So there are contradictions within this in itself, but I think we leave it up to them and let them come back to us and see what they can do and what works for them.
Mhm.
I mean, with that existing parking lot there too, the flow of traffic is kind of strange through there, so that's another component that maybe why they want it back is just the way the parking has historically worked in there. But I think there's a lot to do with some nice landscaping and some outdoor features.
Yeah, I think it'd look good blended in there. I mean, they put a lot of work in that shopping center to give
Yeah.
it the feel it has now, so
Yeah.
if you can carry that and still, you know, I'm all for business, so if you can make it work.
Yeah,
I'd be
you could
interested to
almost
see it.
match the stone
Yeah.
pillar they have, then with the timber,
Sure.
you know, and then you could do a little a fencing or some kind of trellis around the outside. You know, obviously, they're trying to make it attractive for patrons as well, but it would give a
I'd like
nice
to see it.
outdoor feature to that. And the seating and everything, we've gone back and forth with that, that's going to be very close to what the seating was prior, even with the diner. So it's kind of more condensed seating, but it's gonna be very close to what they had before.
I'm interested to see if it comes back with some
Yeah.
designs.
Well, members of the board, I'm Lori Mason, this is my husband, Robert Mason. What we're really, why we came here tonight is as Jim said, we sort of have to make a move in one direction in order to establish whether we can get this diner or not. So we came to you just to sort of get a start, feel, yay, nay, maybe yes, no. I'm feeling that it looks like we've got sort of some positive feedback here that was a possibility. So it's something, if we can do that, then we would pursue that and try and get something in front of you with some kind of site plan review. We just need to know so we can make a decision on how to deal with the other end of it out in Ohio about, purchasing the diner, et cetera. So,
I think we're certainly open to considering it, yeah.
Okay.
Encourage you to do some initial sketching and let us see what you come up with. I think they because of the depth of the lot and the size of the modular unit that you're thinking about putting in there, I think you've got a pretty nice amount of leeway to develop in front and in back and move the modular unit back and forth and really create some kind of a unique little niche in that lot right there.
yeah.
It could really be quite
I
attractive.
think that's the other difficulty is because of the narrowness. It is a narrow lot, a relatively narrow shaped lot, that bringing out front does kind of limit it a little bit. So I do think that maybe pivoting it, the long way may be a little bit more beneficial for spatial needs that they have. But again, it's up to them, and you guys clearly have given them some guidelines as far as, some support on that. So I think they're able to move forward one way or the other. But I do think it's not going to be just simple, just drop this in and go. We're going to need to see some other outdoor architectural features to, but I think it could be unique, and I think it, again, it could be unique and also kind of tie into some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other communications for us tonight?
No, this time we're sitting on a couple of, one staff review that we started when Chris was here. We're not quite complete. We're waiting on a few elements for that. Do we have anything else, Mary, that's forthcoming? I don't think we have any other applications forthcoming.
I'm not aware of anything.
Yeah. So we're really not aware of anything yet. Obviously, we gotta, we might have a few more days before we see another application, but this time there's nothing yet on the October agenda, but that could change.
Okay.
Also waiting on final plans for High Wire, so we can do the final findings of fact on that as well. But they have not submitted the updated plans yet for you to sign. There were some conditions.
Okay. I have nothing else. Any other comments?
Move to
New
adjourn.
business? Motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Thank you.